She walked out on her husband at a luxury dinner after he mocked her dreams. What happened next turned her into the empire builder he never thought she'd become. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss an incredible story like this one. It was on an evening that was meant to celebrate love. A rare moment meant for us to reconnect, that I first saw the cracks in the foundation of our marriage, not as a sudden realization, but as a slow and painful unveiling of the truth I had been hiding from myself for too long. We had always been told that the best things in life came when you least expected them, but nothing about that night felt like a celebration. The fancy restaurant we had chosen was a symbol of the success we had built together, or so I thought. The rich decor, the crisp tablecloths, the fine wine that swirled in our glasses, it all screamed elegance. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. I remember how he smiled at me across the table, the dim lighting casting shadows on his face. The same face I had once adored, the one that had charmed me into marriage. But now, it felt distant, unfamiliar. He was dressed in a tailored suit, his hair neatly combed, his posture the picture of casual confidence. I, on the other hand, had spent hours preparing for this dinner, carefully choosing a dress, styling my hair, making sure I looked perfect for him. But as I gazed at him, something felt off. His words, when they came, would cement the truth that had been lurking in the back of my mind for months. We had been through so much together, early struggles, late nights, the tension between our careers and personal lives. But somewhere along the way, we lost our way. Or perhaps, I had lost myself. The evening began like any other. We exchanged pleasantries, joked about our busy lives, and complimented the exquisite cuisine. But then, his words started to twist. Casual remarks became cutting jabs disguised as jokes. "It's amazing how you still find time to work on that little project of yours," he said, leaning back in his chair and smirking. His tone, though light, held an edge, a sharpness I hadn't noticed before. "You know, most people like us don't have to bother with things like that. We're comfortable just as we are." I chuckled, trying to brush off the comment. But inside, a cold pit began to form in my stomach. I had heard him make similar remarks before, usually with a joking tone, but they always left a lingering sting. This time, however, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his words than a casual joke. My business, my passion, my empire, was something I had built from the ground up, a lifeline that had kept me afloat when I felt like I was drowning. And yet, here he was, dismissing it as something insignificant, almost a hobby. I tried to laugh it off, pushing my wine glass away, and turning the conversation to more neutral ground. But he wasn't finished. "Don't you think it's a little funny?" he asked, leaning forward now, his voice becoming more pointed. "I mean, you're always working so hard, but for what? Who are you really fooling? You think you can change the world with this little business? It's cute, really, but let's be honest. You're not going to be the next big thing. You're not going to be the one to make the difference." The words cut deep. I had worked tirelessly, sleepless nights, sacrifices I had made to build this business. And now, here he was, belittling it in front of me. My heart started to race, but I tried to keep my composure. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped my wine glass. I couldn't understand. How had we gotten here? How had the man who once supported me become someone who mocked me? I could feel my breath catch in my throat as the warmth of the restaurant felt suffocating. This wasn't a joke. He wasn't just teasing. There was something colder in his eyes, something distant. A deep, unspoken resentment. This wasn't about the business. This was about something much bigger. My mind began to spin. I had been so caught up in proving myself to him, trying to balance our lives, our careers, that I had neglected my own needs. But the moment I realized he no longer believed in me was the moment I also realized that I had stopped believing in myself. I had been living for him, for us, for a future I thought we shared. But that night, in the glow of the restaurant's chandeliers, I saw the truth. My future was not tied to him. It was mine to create. I needed air. My thoughts were rushing, crashing into each other. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor, and excused myself. My heart pounded in my chest as I walked quickly towards the restroom, my mind swirling in confusion, anger, and disbelief. I stood in front of the mirror, taking slow, deep breaths, trying to steady myself. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. She looked like me, but she was someone who had forgotten who she was, someone who had given so much of herself that she had nothing left to give. I didn't recognize her anymore. The reflection in the mirror was a wake-up call. How had I let myself become so small? How had I allowed his words to define me? I was no longer the woman who could sit quietly in the background, pretending to be happy while sacrificing my dreams. I had poured everything I had into building a life with him, but somewhere along the way, I had lost myself. That moment, staring at my reflection, was the turning point. I wasn't just angry at him. I was angry at myself for letting this happen. When I stepped out of the restroom, I felt different. I walked back to the table, where he was now looking at his phone, unaware of the storm brewing inside of me. My feet felt like they were moving on their own, carrying me towards something I hadn't realized I needed: freedom. Without a word, I grabbed my coat, my purse, and without looking back, I left. I could hear him calling after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't care anymore. The woman I was had just walked out of that restaurant. And she wasn't coming back. I remember walking briskly down the street, the cold air biting at my skin. I felt alive. There was no shame, no guilt, only the realization that I had just made the most important decision of my life. The decision to take control, to stop living for someone else, to stop pretending I was fine when I had never been more lost. The next few months were a blur. I threw myself into my business, as though the very act of working would be my salvation. I was determined to prove to myself, and to him, that I didn't need anyone's validation to succeed. My focus was unwavering. I learned everything I could, from marketing to operations, finance, and leadership. I wasn't just building a business. I was building myself. The results were slow at first, but they came. Slowly, I began to see the fruits of my labor. Clients began to trust me, my brand gained recognition, and my confidence soared. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. For the first time in years, I felt free. I was no longer confined by the expectations of a man who had never truly believed in me. I was my own person now. As I built my business, I built my life. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, who believed in me and my vision. I learned to trust my instincts again, to trust my own worth. I was no longer the woman I had been, the one who had been content to sit in the shadows, the one who had put everyone else first. I was the woman who stood tall, proud of what she had built, unapologetically ambitious, and fiercely independent. One day, I received a call from him. His voice was hesitant, unsure. He spoke of his regrets, of how he wished he had supported me more, of how proud he was of my success. I listened quietly, but inside, I felt nothing but a sense of finality. His words didn't move me anymore. I had moved on. The woman I was now wasn't interested in revisiting the past. "I'm glad you're proud of me," I said, my voice steady. "But I didn't need you to believe in me to get here. I believed in myself." And with that, I ended the conversation. There was nothing left to say. I had built my empire. And no one, not even him, could take that away from me. Years passed, and my business continued to grow, evolving into something more significant than I had ever imagined. My life was no longer defined by anyone else's expectations. I had finally found the woman I had always been meant to be. And now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who is strong, confident, and independent, someone who took the leap when it mattered most. In the end, walking out of that dinner had been the best decision of my life.